Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, or whenever the heck you're listening to this. Welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. Hello, everyone. This is Producer JL opening the program for you here today. I'm a slightly different voice than Rob. His voice is a lot nicer than mine. And today on the show, it's just me and Dave, Mr. Maestro, the head of the site, the man who likes to stir things on Twitter when he feels like it, or when his kids are not making tweets on his Twitter account. Dave, how the heck are you? It's been a minute.
I am alive. I'm here. I'm somewhat functioning, as anybody can with two kids in diapers. But I'm here, and I'm happy that we're actually able to record for the first time, in a while. It's been about 84 years.
It's
And
been
yeah, we're
84
aware.
years. Yes,
We're
we are.
aware that we are not as consistent as we'd like to be, but
Mhm.
that's kind of hard when between the five, one, two, three, four, five of us that are normally here. There's four kids under the age of 3,
Mhm.
and two of you work nights. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of tough.
It's not
We do the best
yeah.
we can, and I'm sure you guys aren't really complaining about not hearing my voice. I've heard my voice; it's not overly great. I'd rather listen to JL and Rob too.
Oh, no. Don't tell me that. Don't get my head full of air. Um, so yeah,
Fuller,
like Dave yeah,
fuller.
yeah. So like Dave said, we've been pretty busy as of late, but we've definitely kept our eye on the Rangers. A couple of games have been attended between all of us, and we've definitely taken note as of things that have gone on. Also, just we hope to see Becky and Rob and Nick in the upcoming episodes for the playoffs, and we wish them nothing but the best with everything that's you know with them and their kids and all that. So best of luck to everyone who is not here. Anyways, all right. Not a great transition. I apologize. So now here, President's Trophy, Rangers, happy times in New York
That was
City.
the that was a very smooth transition.
Was it? I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'll take it from you. That's all right. Happy
So
times in the city. Yes. The New
yeah,
York
President's
Rangers.
Trophy and a very unstressful season. This was the least stressed I've been since the site started in 2008, December 3rd,
Wow.
2008.
Wow.
I never once, even during their blip in December, January, when basically Igor Shesterkin got Thanos out of here for a little bit, and the Rangers only went 500. I never felt like this wasn't a team that could still win the cup, and I
Right.
still feel that way. Injuries really derailed them until they got Wenberg and Roslovic. And there's what else can you say about this team? They did everything that was asked of them. They had players play up in the lineup and do somewhat okay, minus Nick Bonino. They had players move around. They actually swapped the defense pairs for the first time in probably since the last time we actually recorded the podcast.
Right.
Um, uh, I I am cautiously optimistic, but also confident about the way the season went and about their chances to make a run through June.
Right. And I think a lot of it comes from just proper management. And I feel as if that's something that we had been barking at for years. And you mentioned, the previous regimes, since you said the website started. So that would include Glenn Sather, Jeff Gordon, obviously John Davidson. And then you got guys like guys who are decision makers like Gordy Clark. I think I'm assuming Don Maloney was still here in 2008. So there have been
No, he was with the Coyotes at that point.
okay,
I'm
like
sorry, I
well he
poked myself in the eye, and I'm having trouble focusing right now. I don't know how I poked myself in the eye, but I did. And
no,
then I
that's a
went through like not 14 coaches. So it was Rennie, Tortorella, AV, Quinn,
Quinn.
Douchebag, and Laviolette.
Well, I love that's our affectionate name for Gerard Gallant. Oh no, he who shall not be named, so to speak. But
Yeah,
just with the season in general, I definitely do agree with that. It was a very it wasn't a stressful season in the sense that there was any doubt. And like you mentioned through January, you know they were still doing some things right, but it was just kind of just bad luck and just bad goal. And then there were the nights where everything didn't go right. And on most evenings when, you have like a bad loss here and there, it gets kind of magnified in the middle of a long losing streak. But the fact that they were able to stay 500, it was a 12-12, I think it was, if I'm correct. I could be wrong, but during that stretch, just goes to show you how good this team actually is. And with the acquisitions of Wenberg and Roslovic, it you know it it really stabilized them. And before we get into really much of the playoff matchup, because it's still pretty early. We're recording this on Wednesday, so we'll have this out for Thursday. So the first game of the playoffs start Sunday. That was actually announced right before we recorded this podcast, that the first slate of games were released and the playoffs will start on April 20th. The NHL actually moved it 2 days ahead, so that's always good. So the first games will start on Saturday, and then the Rangers will be the second game of like either a doubleheader or a tripleheader on Sunday at 3 p.m. on MSG and also TNT and other national outlets. So with that being said, you talk about the lineup, right? Right before we get into the playoffs, you talk about the lineup. And actually this actually goes into something else that I was going to say too, just about the team in general. Injuries decimated them, but they were still able to fight through it. You lost Fox for a significant period of time, who, even in the limited time that he had, he put up 18 goals. Imagine if he had been there for that extended period of time where he didn't get hurt after that November game against Carolina. Obviously, you lose Filip Chytil. That was a huge
that
blow.
was the biggest loss.
That was
Heedle
yeah,
was the biggest loss by far, and I don't think people really understood how big that loss was until they went out and got Wenberg.
right. And also, you just look at the center depth that they had to deal with at the time. And you mentioned Nick Bonino. I'm turning into Jack Edwards here. Nick Bonino.
Oh, fuck that guy.
Well, he just announced he's retiring. So, but
Good, fuck him.
he infamously, in the Bruins Rangers series when Bonino did play, he messed up Bonino's name. So I pull a Jack Edwards there. But you had Nick Bonino playing third line center, and that was supposed to be a temporary fix. And obviously, with the team being up really hard against the cap, they just couldn't get someone in the moment. And that really did expose a lot of the flaws in Nick Bonino's game. And it's kind of a shame because he seemed like a pretty well-liked guy in the clubhouse, but it just goes to show you that, if you don't produce, you're going to get, kicked off. And that's the one thing I like that Chris Drury did. But you lose also Capo Caco for an extended period of time. And you also lose Blake Wheeler, too, who was actually doing somewhat okay on that top line with Mika and Kreider, and they still managed to win the President's Trophy somehow. So that's really a testament to just the coaching staff and the structure and the management for putting this core group of guys together. We like to talk about vibes, and that's one thing that gets thrown around on the internet so much, but truly this team has really come together, especially after the debacle that they experienced under Gerard Gallant. So now that you go from winning the President's Trophy, it was announced not too long ago that Filip Chytil has been cleared to practice, and he was in a non-contact jersey before their game against the Islanders, if I'm correct. If not, it was after the game against before the Senators. And it makes you think now, we might have our own little Vegas moment here where we're able to somewhat circumvent the cap now that Heedle's back. So now this begs the question. So when do the Rangers bring Filip Chytil back in? and where does he play? Because now it's kind of tricky because now, these players have kind of put together their chemistry with the players that they've played with. And, it's everyone in the lineup with the exception of maybe one or two players, but even then, those two are still pretty vital, kind of make it a tough decision to take out of the lineup. There's some
Oh no, it's an
expendable.
easy decision. This is
Well,
easy.
well, yeah, I know it's gonna be Rempe, of course, but I'm just saying though that there's still there's a quality that he does somewhat bring to the table for a playoff series. So it's not a decision where you can just say, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." You kind of have to think about it in a sense. So I'll mention my idea once you go through yours, but Filip Chytil's back, where do you put him?
So I'm going to start with saying I understand why people want to put him on Mika Zibanejad's line over Jack Roslovic. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I think it is very short sighted, and I think it doesn't actually address anything other than the excitement of having Heedle back. Zibanejad, Kreider, and Roslovic are fine. And I disagree with this because do you really want somebody who missed 90% of the year coming back for the playoffs in a position he doesn't play, facing top competition and playing in what will essentially be a secondary shutdown role, which is what Zibanejad's line is. Let's remember the roles matter with Peter Laviolette. Unlike Gallant, unlike Quinn, where we were promised roles and we never got shit. This is actually important when you have a coach that actually fucking coaches. You have your primary scoring line, which is the Panarin line. You have your secondary scoring line, which is Zibanejad. You have your shutdown line, Wenberg, and you have currently, Heedle notwithstanding, your fourth line, which I guess an energy line, for lack of a better phrase here. Those are the roles that they have. Then you look at who they're going to face when the Rangers have last change, which they do 4 games out of 7 in every series. Wenberg gets top competition. If for some reason you can't get Wenberg out there, Zibanejad, who played the shutdown role until Wenberg was acquired, is your secondary shutdown center. So if Wenberg comes off, the Rangers just can't get Wenberg out there against they got the cap, so Ovechkin. Then Zibanejad gets out there. That frees up Panarin to get offensive zone starts against hopefully second, third, fourth line competition, and then your fourth line is whatever. When you put Heedle in at third line center between Cooley and Kako, now that line, which can be a shutdown line too, because Heedle is a very good defensive center, now you have a tertiary scoring line, one that can cycle and make life hell and is going to get third and fourth line competition. Like I'm looking at the Caps lineup. Can you just picture Heedle, Kako, and Cooley spending 3-4 minutes in the offensive zone, exaggerating mildly here, against what, Hendricks, Lapierre, Max Pacioretty, and Sonny Milano? They're not going to be able to do shit against this trio. Heedle, Kako, and Cooley will run wild on them. It'll be 1980s Hulkamania with those three, with third line against third line, if the Rangers are able to get that. You're not going to get that with Wenberg. I love Wenberg, but you're not going to get that with him. He doesn't have that offensive touch that Heedle has. So now you have a primary matchup opportunity where you assume Panarin is going to wind up against the Dylan Strome line. And that line can't play defense to save their lives. You got a top line Zibanejad who's going to probably get some shifts against Ovechkin, some shifts against Strome. They'll match up as needed. And then your fourth line becomes Wenberg, Vesey, and Goodrow, hopefully with Rempe rotating in for Goodrow here and there. And that's your shutdown line. I don't think you're going to see, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you're not going to see Rempe in a shutdown role, so maybe Brodzinski will rotate in and Rempe becomes your 14th forward in a pinch if you need him. The Caps aren't going to be able to compete against that when the Rangers have a third scoring line that can also be a defensive line. No, how many teams can actually compete against that?
No, you're right. You definitely make a good point there because you know, um, I'm the type of guy that is weary about breaking up matchups, uh, just for the fact that there's always that delicate balance of who can do what with what. And I've noticed that it's gotten a little bit better this year and I'll use the example is, there would be times where Panarin would get thrown on that top line with Zibanejad and Kreider, and it would absolutely not work. But the one thing I've noticed is that Laviolette still does that, but he only does it in certain situations, which it's worked out, you know, for a plethora of moments throughout the season. So I guess maybe me just kind of, I don't want to say worried, but just from past coaches not being able to handle things properly. And you mentioned roles, Gerard Gallant and David Quinn are full of crap, when they say, people were going to get roles and they didn't,
Oh,
and they just put Barclay Goodrow up on the top line. Um, but yeah, it's a difficult, I don't want to say it's one of those good problems to have because you know, Wenberg is a puck possession monster, and me personally, I wouldn't want to see the Cooley, Wenberg, and Kako line broken up, but I'm amenable to seeing the chains just because I know, like you said, Filip Chytil is basically that same type of player, but with more offensive skill. And like you said, he can also play uh, a good, a defensive role. I do think though that I will say Heedle probably fits more on the third line. I have a feeling he might start on the fourth line because he hasn't played in how long has it been since November, but it's a pretty significant amount of time. He's hasn't played serious hockey before Thanksgiving, so it just depends on how much the Rangers trust Heedle to get thrown out there basically into the Wolves, right off the bat. But, we'll see. Uh, I do think Rempe gets some action in, um, because I just think that in a series like this with Washington, they're going to try and bully, especially with Tom Wilson. So I think Rempe might get some reps, and might maybe have somebody as a spare to kind of fill in. But I definitely do agree with your summation that he takes the third line role, and I think he'd do well there, um, so to speak. So now that we kind of have an idea of where Filipino would go if he were to be slotted back into the lineup, let's just kind of take a look at, this is not going to be like a crazy prediction of the series because, we haven't had enough time to kind of delve too much into it. That'll probably be in a post within the next couple of days or so. Um, so obviously we're playing Washington. And the funny thing about Washington is I can't remember if they were one of the few teams or the first team or one of the few teams on a list that have made the playoffs with a negative goal differential, which I found to be quite interesting. So,
so a lot of teams do, just not with a -40 goal differential.
well, but that's what I'm saying though. It's more or less like, maybe it's like one or two, worst part, maybe 10, 15. But I think the last number I saw was -37. Maybe it's a -40, but that's insane. So now you wonder, we're not going to get into the whole questioning the playoff format. That's another podcast episode for another day
Oh
because
God,
there were
I don't
teams
want to get
there.
into that shit. I could go on for fucking ever on that.
Seriously, there were more teams that had better records than the Capitals did, and they still missed out, all because of technicalities. But that's beside the point. The opponent is Washington. Um, just a brief summation, Dave, about Washington. What do you think about them? And maybe, I guess, like a little prediction on how do you think the series would go?
So the Rangers are very clearly the better team. And this isn't even about points, finishing with more points or anything like that. If you just look at the lineups, the Rangers are the better team. But the Caps still have Ovechkin, Oshie, Strome. Much as I hate this douchebag Tom Wilson, they still have John Carlson. They have enough skill up front to capitalize on the Rangers' mistakes. And the other Lindgren is very capable of stealing a series, as we've seen it. I think he's put up like a 960 save percentage against the Rangers this year.
Mm-hmm.
This, and he's according to Luker, who put out a couple of charts earlier today. He is very good on the penalty kill as a goalie. So that does not match up well against the Rangers in terms of goaltending. But the Rangers are going to have to beat good goalies and good teams. So I think the Rangers win in five. I think they take the first two at MSG. They drop one. They drop game three in Washington. Laviolette adjusts and they just steamroll through. And I do think it's five. I think Laviolette has this team going for the jugular. And I don't think we run into these issues where they, get 3-1, 3-2 series leads and they don't close it out. And they just look bad in non-game seven closeout situations.
Well, just judging off your comment, you can obviously tell that a lot of us are scarred from
Yeah.
from previous years because you can only count so many times where the Rangers would put up a 3-1 lead or they would have so much momentum only to blow it and make it to a game seven. I actually think that's actually almost what happened with the series in 2012. I think they had a lead and they ended up blowing it. They had to force it to a game seven. I think the I'm probably not remembering this correctly, but it was the game after the Brad Richards over game tying goal, the Mark Stahl overtime winner. I think they had the opportunity to win the series right after that, and they couldn't
Yep.
in Washington, and it forced a game seven where Michael Del Zotto basically sped past Alex Ovechkin to score a goal.
Oh,
Um,
Michael Del Zotto.
I know. Look, we could go on a whole different podcast. I have a series about it on the blog about basically Rangers from the past. It's one of the reasons why I'm single again because that's I have nothing else better to do. But in terms of just the teams, uh, Washington scares me a little bit because for some reason, and obviously regular season is a bit different than playoffs. But the one thing I've noticed about Washington and Spencer Carberry, I'll give him credit. Very, very knowledgeable coach. I've watched a couple of videos of him breaking things down and explaining certain things and how he implements a system, similar to the way the videos of Dan Muse were cycling around Twitter when Muse was in another organization. Um, Spencer Carberry is similar in the sense that he will also adjust too. He is a decent coach. And the Capitals have definitely benefited from that. The coaching and the hard work has definitely made up for their quote unquote lack of talent, so to speak. Um, the Capitals do scare me a little bit, not too much, because of the way that they've been able to clog the neutral zone for the range against the Rangers. I've noticed in a lot of the games that they would play against each other, the Rangers had a hard time breaking through the neutral zone. And one of the things that the Rangers have done very well is they've been able to utilize their defense on the rush in many instances. And a lot of what was affecting those games against the Capitals were the fact that they were really plugging up the neutral zone and not letting guys like Mika and Panarin get through and forcing them to dump it in and make the 50-50 play down in the corner. At least that's my observation. I could be totally wrong. This is just what I remember when I watched. But and then you mentioned Charlie Lindgren. He's obviously going to be the starter. He's obviously the better goaltender in the situation, even though Darcy Kemper is still pretty good. But if the Capitals will be crazy not to put Charlie Lindgren against the Rangers, and I don't know what it is. I think he's just really come out of his shell. I personally never thought Charlie Lindgren was that good of a goaltender because when he was on Montreal, he was kind of a sieve. He comes to Washington, I guess something changes, and he's become a really solid option for that team. And like you mentioned, Alex Ovechkin, John Carlson, Tom Wilson. You could even throw in a guy like Nicholas Aube-Kubel, Max Pacioretty. Granted, the Rangers are the better team, but the Capitals are no slouch. That being said, I think this series goes six. This is eerily reminiscent to me, at least, of the first round of the 2015 playoffs when they faced Pittsburgh. I think the Rangers won
They won
game
in
1,
5.
lost. Yeah, they won in 5, but it's just kind of like the similar team set up. Rangers were the powerhouse President's Trophy winners. Penguins were kind of like the scrappy team trying to find their way. And obviously, that ended with Carl Hagelin winning it in overtime in game 5. But the teams it's a very similar situation. So it really just all depends on how they come out on Sunday afternoon. So that's really my take on that. So I think they win in 6. I think the Capitals squeeze out a couple of wins in Washington. I think the Rangers really take it home at Madison Square Garden. So before we go, um with with my incoherent rambling and Dave's very well thoughtful uh pieces, because
You're
that's Dave.
even my wife doesn't say that, so I know you're bullshitting me.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. But then again, she's your wife. She's allowed to say that. I can't say that, or I'm gonna get fired. Um, the New York Rangers announced on Monday, the 15th, that they had some player awards given out. So the Rangers announced that Artemi Panarin was named the most valuable player for the team, voted by the Rangers media, and
What a
then
shame that
Jonathan.
vote is.
I know.
Please. You know who should have been the MVP? Nick
Who?
Bonito.
Ah, well, Dave, now
Sorry, I know I
so
shouldn't do
no
that.
time for jokes, David. Come on. What do you think this is? A comedy podcast?
Have you looked at me? I look like I should be in comedy.
Oh, David,
That was a
stop.
terrible way of saying. You know what? That was awful. I'm done. Nope. That was a horrible joke. That was horrible, self-deprecating joke. Even I didn't laugh at that. So that. Oh my god, I'm ashamed of myself.
I am
No,
laughing out of
continue. Sorry.
I am laughing out of pity. Panarin wins the Rangers MVP, voted on by the Rangers media. Jonathan Quick was named the winner of the Players Award, as voted by his teammates. And Adam Fox was honored with the 3rd annual Rod Gilbert Award, the Mr. Ranger Award. And also, let's not forget, Vincent Trocheck is the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award winner for this year. So I just real quick, just a couple of thoughts on those players and the awards that they were given amidst your self-deprecation streak.
So Trocheck, yeah, you have to keep me, honest if I butcher this. Trocheck getting the Stephen McDonald Award. Um, you know, I kind of defaulted to Adam Fox on that because he's just Adam Fox. I am happy Trocheck won. He has been just an absolute revelation this season, and he's really an unsung hero for this team. We know he gets a lot of credit for what he's done, but in terms of holding together the offense after Heedle went down, because if you think about it, Heedle went down, the Rangers lost what was essentially their secondary scoring line that could also double as a shutdown line. It
Mm-hmm.
was Cooley, Trocheck, Kako at the time, and that was essentially going to be the Rangers shutdown line, at least to start the season. He moves up to the second line center role, and Zibanejad takes the shutdown center role. When Zibanejad and Kreider are in a shutdown role, you need Trocheck, Panarin, and Laugh to really produce. And holy shit, did they produce! And
Oh man.
Panarin deserved the team MVP award just for that ridiculous season and taking 47,000 shot attempts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that line doesn't click without Trocheck,
Nope.
and it's his face off. He was what, top 5 in the league in face offs. His
Mm-hmm.
percentage not doubled, obviously, but it went up a couple percentage points with the little
Mm-hmm.
tricks that Christian Hamor, yeah, Mura
Christian
Hamura, however you
Christian
pronounce his
Amora.
last name.
It's also
You
Michael
know,
Pekka too.
it was Michael Pekka too. That when it was announced, I was a little surprised, and then I said, "Wait, no, that's a very good pick." Without
Mm-hmm.
Trocheck, he's essentially an unsung hero. The Rangers fall
Right.
apart.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then obviously you have Jonathan Quick, basically being voted the Players Player Award. And I'll say this about some of the awards that have gone up. I think Jonathan Quick came to this team at the right time. Obviously, before the season, Us being, scorned Ranger fans, we were a little not upset, so to speak, just kind of a little bewildered at the signing because we had just gotten a season of Yaro Halak, who was very good in his own right, mind you. And I honestly thought they were going to re-sign him, but obviously he wanted too much money. Um, and then, you go back to 2014, we kind of have a little bit of a dislike of the guy at the time. But, when you find out his story, I mean, it was kind of already known. I knew this at least, and I'm sure a lot of us also knew, that he grew up in Connecticut. He grew up a Ranger fan. He was, a Mike Richter kind of guy. So the more he began to play, the more he began to do well, the more that you began to see that he was really returning to the form that he had in Los Angeles, because he went from LA, who he was awful in LA, and the same thing in Vegas. He wasn't great in Vegas either. Still wins the Stanley Cup, but wasn't great in Vegas either. And so we're all thinking, well, what the heck, what is this guy going to do? We got this Ranger killer, and he's going to come in here, he's going to suck. And then all he did was, I think he had an undefeated, I think what his first 8 games as a Ranger, if I'm correct. And once that happened, we got to see more of him, and his personality kind of endeared. And he had gone through this before multiple times. A multiple Stanley Cup winner, 3-time Cup winner. He, carried teams for years, with the Kings. He's seen it all. He's basically done it all. And it seems like it was a good fit for the team at the time. So it's really good that they kind of rallied around him. Then, he became the, all-time winningest American goaltender this year. And he's, set a couple of records. So I think that kind of put them together as well. And I think they really appreciated his efforts, because truth be told, when you look at Igor and his bad stretch, where, like you said, he got Thanos pretty much, who was the one that basically kept the team afloat on the back end? It was Jonathan Quick. And there was actually discourse right before the All-Star break that people wanted Jonathan Quick to start. And
Shocker.
yeah, but it wasn't, honestly, it's not at the time, really looking at it in the context of the situation, as ridiculous as that sounded, it really wasn't that far off of an observation. It really wasn't that wacko to think of. And the Rangers did it right, because what they did was Igor goes to Florida, he goes to the All-Star game, he just resets, and I think that's exactly what he needed, and they were allowed to do that, because then after the All-Star break, Jonathan Quick played the first 2 games. And they said it was, oh yeah, it was allowed. Yeah, that was the plan in place. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Either way, they were allowed to do that because of how well Jonathan Quick was playing, and obviously that's important for any team to have success. I'll say this about the Adam Fox Mr. Ranger Award. Um, you know, I met Rod Gilbert once. I met him, granted it was through Zoom, but you couldn't ask for a better player than a guy like Adam Fox. Now, if you've noticed, he had his knee injury was pretty serious. And the fact that he was able to come back and still play at an elite level just kind of exemplifies, similar to the type of player that Rod Gilbert was. You look at some videos online, I think both Kako and Fox have knee braces on when they're in the locker room. And even though Fox hasn't really done what he did during his rookie season, where he would just skate through like 10 people. I mean, that's how he scored his, first hockey an NHL goal. It's just the awareness, the puck IQ, the skill. It was all encompassing, even when he was playing basically on one leg. And I think he was the perfect choice for that. And I think I think the injury was kind of the line between him getting the Stephen McDonald Award and this award. So this is kind of like, I don't want to say second place. That's not really nice to say. But it was kind of like, hey, this is what you can get, even though you didn't play the whole season. And in terms of Artemi Panarin, I mean, come on. Do you really have to mention anything more about that? Uh, Panarin has been the gleam of my eye, and also the bane of my existence fantasy wise, because every time I face Russell, who's picked him, Russell, one of our contributors, I faced him in fantasy. Artemi Panarin would score all the time and almost beat me a couple times. Actually, Panarin and Nate McKinnon are the reason why Russell's beating me in the championship right now. So, but yeah, obviously, Panarin putting up his career year. And again, before we go, I'll say this. Gerard Gallant enemy number one.
Ugh.
Tell me, Dave, how on earth do you screw that up where you have this dynamic player and you can't even get half of an effort? David Quinn was able to get something out of this guy, and David Quinn was awful, relatively speaking. So how is it that a guy who claims to be a player's coach not be able to get the best out of his arguably his most skilled player? Explain that to me, David, please.
So I don't know. I am hesitating because I'm trying to find an answer. And I don't know if it's necessarily Gallant shutting Panarin down. We don't know when that whole little, hanging him out to dry in front of the team thing happened. We do know that's one of the main reasons why he was fired, because there was basically a Tortorella type mutiny against Gallant in the locker room after the Devils ended their season prematurely. But if you look at the 2 seasons, and I got just Yahoo stats up, I'm not looking at anything crazy. Panarin had two of his lowest shot totals in full seasons under Gallant. I'm not entirely sure what that was. It was 177 in 75 games in Gallant's first season, and then 204 shots in his second season in 82 games.
Mhm.
So about the same pace. The only full season where two full seasons where he shot the puck less was his rookie year in Chicago, 2015, 2016, where he didn't really need to carry the offense, and his first season in Columbus. Sorry, his second season in Columbus, where he took 191 shots. Without looking, how many shots did he take this year? Shots on goal,
Uh,
not shot attempts. Shots on goal.
oh man, it's got to be over 500, I assume, right?
That okay? Even Ovechkin doesn't get to 500 shots. Ovechkin,
No, I
no
know.
man. Let's live on planet Earth here.
Okay, let's say I'm gonna say 250.
303.
Wow. No kidding.
That is 75 ish. Hold on. Am I doing that math right? 80, 228 plus 80 is 308 minus 5. Yeah. That is 75 more shots than his prior career high. 75. And it's
Wow.
not like he was shooting at a ridiculous clip to get the 49 goals. His career average is 14.6. He shot 16%. So he wasn't really getting lucky. He just shot the puck more. And maybe it's because he shaved his head and I'm looking at the picture, he looks like a fucking serial killer. So maybe he got that serial killer attitude because he knew that his mortal enemy is gone. And he said, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck Gerard Gallant. I'm going to show everybody what I can do. 49 goals, 120 points, of which only 44 are on the power play. So the 40, 120, 33% roughly, right
Mhm.
around league average. Nobody cares what Puck Daddy has to say. The Rangers are not power play merchants. And
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how Gallant butchered that. I don't care how Gallant butchered that. All I know is Gallant really only lasts 2-3 years with each team, and now we know why.
Right.
And serial killer Panarin, hopeful. I mean, the playoffs are really going to dictate his New York legacy.
Mhm.
So if
Well, this is
he,
basically the put up or shut up season if you think about it.
they
Because
have to win the cup this year. Well,
oh,
let me walk that back. I'm walking that back. They have to go out there and show that they're a top team in the NHL. If they go to the Eastern Conference Final and lose a hard fought game 3-2 in overtime, whatever. At that point you get into coin flip hockey games. If
mhm.
they go to the Stanley Cup final, they lose in 6 to Dallas, but they're all close games, and you can point to one or two things here or there that you're like, well, shit, if that didn't happen, you never know.
Mhm.
Fine. But if they go out in the first round, we're going to have problems. If they
Right.
go out where they're up 2-0 and then they just can't put together another strong game, we're going to have issues.
Right.
Even not so much the first round because of their opponent, but let's say they Carolina, they're probably going to get Carolina in the second round. If they lose 4 in a row in double overtime, 2-1 or 3-2, but they control the game most of the time, are we really going to have complaints? Obviously, we are, but Carolina's a top 2 team in the league too.
Mm-hmm.
So they can win. I think they will win, but they need luck too, and that's
Right.
the piece we can't predict.
Absolutely. And just to touch on Panarin again real quick, you know, we can sit here and harp on Gerard Gallant all we want. Obviously it didn't really work out. Obviously Panarin basically coming out of his shell and putting up career highs everywhere is obviously, led this team to where it's been at. But now, like you said, it's time for him to basically start doing this in the playoffs. Whether or not this new, activity in terms of shooting the puck more translates well into the playoffs. Just judging off of the play style, I think it does, but we'll just have to wait and see. And you know, the expectations are really high. Um, definitely, they definitely need to at least make it to the Eastern Conference Final to get the fan base to the point where it's like, okay, well, this is not a total wash. You win the President's Trophy, you got all the 94 parallels, coming in
Oh
and
my!
out.
Oh god, the 94 power. I'm gonna slap Tyler. No offense, Tyler. I know you're gonna listen to this. If you put one more 1994 parallel into the group chat, I'm gonna reach through the computer screen and slap you. All right, I get it. There's a lot of parallels. Most of them around O.J. Simpson. Enough with 1994. I get it. This is 2024. Let this team do something. Half the team wasn't even fucking born yet.
Yeah, there was like maybe 2 or 3 members of the team that
Sorry.
were probably like really young. No, you're good.
I can't
So,
deal with these 1994 parallels. I mean, that team was 107 years old on average. They traded their entire future for the cup, which obviously it worked out.
mhm.
This team is completely different. Anyway,
No,
sorry,
you're not.
I'm off my fucking soapbox. I'm done.
No,
I'm done.
no, but you're absolutely right though. The 94 parallels are cool, but it gets to the point where you can't solely rely on that. They still have to go out, they still have to play the hockey, they still have to make the saves and score the goals. And a lot of people tend to forget, even though I was only 1 when it happened. Um, I
Oh
watched.
God, fuck you.
Well, well, no, I wasn't trying to make you feel old, Dave. I'm just saying, I
Sure you
watched it.
weren't.
I no, Dave. This is the one time that I actually didn't do that on purpose. Okay, and we're only like 6 years apart, so that's really not that much. Okay. Uh,
9. No, who taught you math?
wait, is
I'm
it 9?
40. I'm
Oh,
40.
oh, sorry. I thought you were. I thought you were 6 years. See, look at that. I thought you were younger than you
I
actually
look
are.
younger, but you could kiss the darkest part of my ass.
It wasn't on purpose. Anyways, um, I pretty much watched almost every game of that playoff run because you could find them on YouTube, and I think there was a DVD set that had the I think most of that playoff run too, if I'm correct. And outside of the first 2 series, it was difficult. Even the Capital series that they played that year was difficult. The Islanders series was nothing. They swept them. That team did not. The Islanders could not hold up a candle to the Rangers. But the
6-0,
Capitals
6-0, 5-1, 5-2. I
5-1,
remember that.
5-2. Yeah. The Capital series was a little tougher. And then obviously the series against New Jersey and then the series against Vancouver, those were no cakewalks. So don't expect, you know, don't expect them to just sleepwalk their way into the playoffs and just kind of mosey their way into the conference final. It's playoff hockey. It's going to be tough. And hopefully, game 1, which I'll be at, they can make a statement and they can actually, start on the right foot. But anyways, that's our program for today. We again, we've been very busy, but are so happy to finally get this one back out, and we'll definitely have more going forward. We'll have a lot of playoff coverage. Check out the blog. We have a ton of stuff in the in the can, ready to come out. And yeah, just continue to keep listening. Thank you to those who listen. Thank you who subscribe. Thank you those who read. And big shout out to Becky, you, Dave, Rob, Nick, and everyone else that contributes to the website. Tyler, other Rob, and everyone else who contributes to the website. Thank you very much. We appreciate all your efforts. This has been another episode of Live from the Boo Seats. Dave, anything you want to say before we go?
Rangers in 4.
I like it. Big, bold. Bold and brash.
Go big or go home.
That's right. All right. Have a good night, good evening, or wherever you're listening to this. And don't forget, let's go Rangers.